Get out my heart from egoistic thoughts. Learning all the lessons that this pressure gave us. Wanna save myself, I gotta save my neighbors. Slowly recognizing egoistic nature. Showing us connection is the only savior. We gon' come together, plow these fields of hatred. All is one with sowing seeds of love relations.
You shatter these walls, recycle this heart from the chains of time. Then we soar through oceans in the sky. Oh, through your cold, to be in love with you, touch you with a bird's eye. See, the world is filled with you. Just in a field that is blessed. Then it come home with you and rest. Just to hunt in a field that is blessed. Then it come home with you and rest.
Only love can save us. Viruses, the hatred, unity gon' vaccinate us. True immunity from all the things that separate us. Everything is only for the good, it's all to change us. Yeah, so with tears and we reaping joy. Ego is the evil seeking to destroy. Education covering the hate with love. Revelation blessings raining from above.
Just to hunt in a field that is blessed. And to come home with you and rest. Just to hunt in a field that is blessed. And to come home with you and rest.
All right, everybody, great to be here. Hello, everyone. Today, in this session of Kabbalah Explained Simply, we will be demystifying the reforming light. Great to see already a lot of friends joining in. I'm looking at the chat right now. I'm seeing a lot of people from a lot of places. Yes, definitely let us know where you're watching from. Yeah, our goal today is to demystify the reforming light. What does that mean in the wisdom of Kabbalah? That's what we'll be getting into. First, I should just give credit to this awesome song that we just heard and the cool kind of typographical music video produced by one of our friends, Ilan Golan. And the song, of course, is produced by Tash and Seth Brightman and Aaron Chester, all of which are fellow Kabbalists, which you might be familiar with from this channel or from KabU, our online learning center. So let's get into it. The reforming light in the wisdom of Kabbalah. If you've went into the materials on this channel, or maybe some source texts from the wisdom of Kabbalah, you may have ran into the concept of the light that reforms, or the reforming light. Same thing. In fact, you may have ran into just the concept of light. And if you went into something like the study of the 10 Sfirot, a seminal piece of work in the wisdom of Kabbalah, then you saw that there's all kinds of lights in the wisdom of Kabbalah. All kinds of lights that Kabbalists are talking about. Surrounding light, reflected light, direct light, abstract light. So we're not going to be including all of it right now, but today you should get a good understanding of what is light, what is really that concept called light. Is it something mystical that Kabbalists are talking about? Is it something unattainable, unexplainable? Or does it have a very specific definition and we can actually understand what they're talking about? And we'll be focusing specifically on what we call in Kabbalah the reforming light, or the light that reforms. So all of this is coming up right now in Kabbalah Explained Simply. Yeah, let's go straight into it. All right. So I want to start with this quote here, which you should be seeing in a second here. Give us a minute. All right. Snow still seeing the slide. We're getting close here, getting close. Not yet. Now you're not seeing anything. Now you should be seeing me. So give us another second here. All right, I have a bit of a technical thing with the presentation here, so I'll let you enjoy the song in the meantime. This should take seconds to 1 or 2 minutes. We are back. Sorry for that hiccup. We have the the slide now, and it's working, no problem. You can see the quote now. So we'll get right into it. The reforming light, or the light that reforms. This is the important quote that I wanted to start with. This is a central quote in the wisdom of Kabbalah, and it's from Baal Sulam's introduction to the 10 Sfirot. Let me actually move my head here a little bit so you can see the source as well. This is from the introduction to Tes. Tes is an acronym for Talmud Eser Sfirot, which means the study of the 10 Sfirot. And essentially, it's a very important introduction, one of the introductions to the wisdom of Kabbalah by the great Kabbalist Yehuda Ashlag, also known as Baal Sulam. Baal Sulam is in Hebrew. That literally means, translates to master of the ladder. And if you don't know, then he is called that way because he wrote an unprecedented and unparalleled commentary to the book of Zohar that is referred to as a ladder that allows you to rise up the levels of understanding and feeling what's written in the book of Zohar. So this great Kabbalist wrote to us here the following. Indeed, there is a great thing that is worthy, a great thing about the study of Kabbalah, which should be publicized. There is a wonderful, invaluable remedy to those who engage in the wisdom of Kabbalah. So, something is so great and wonderful that you get from the wisdom of Kabbalah. He calls it a wonderful, invaluable remedy, and it's so wonderful that it should be publicized. Although they do not understand what they are learning, through the yearning and the great desire to understand what they are learning, they awaken upon themselves the reforming light. All right, so let's try to break it down for a second. There's a couple things here in this quote that we need to understand. First of all, like we said, there's something wonderful, something great, something that is invaluable a remedy, he calls it, that everyone should know about. And it exists in the wisdom of Kabbalah. And that remedy, as he calls it, that wonderful thing, it depends on the desire. He calls it the great desire to understand what they are learning, and the yearning. So this thing, which is referred to as awakening upon ourselves the reforming light, depends not on how much we understand, but on something else, on how much we want, it seems, right? And of course, there's also a question here about what does it actually mean to awaken the reforming light? What does it mean to awaken the light? Now, it sounds very weird, I have to say. It sounds like it needs some scrutiny. It needs some clarification. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So keep these questions in the back of your mind for now. It's fine. We're going to unravel this as we go here. All right. So here's another quote. This one is directly from my teacher, Kabbalist Dr. Michael Leitman. This is something that he said just recently in one of his daily Kabbalah lessons. For every person, there is a unique illumination that only he can awaken. It's not just for humans, but also for the still vegetative and animate. Each and every part of creation is in touch with a unique light. But each part of creation has to awaken towards its light, similar to how a plant responds to the sunlight, the air, or the rain. All right, so what do we get from this? This gives us a bit more perspective. Kabbalists, first of all, let's remind ourselves, what are Kabbalists and what is the wisdom of Kabbalah? Kabbalists are not poets, they're not philosophers, they are researchers. They have a unique technology in order to conduct their research, which is unique and is not like all kinds of physical tools that we typically use to extend the range of our five senses, like a microscope that allows us to see deeper into matter, or a telescope that allows us to see farther away. So unlike those tools that extend the range of our already existing five senses, Kabbalists develop a new kind of sense, and through that sense they research reality. But ultimately what they do is they research the laws of nature, nothing more than that. And from that vantage point, from that research they conduct, they tell us what is nature's overall plan and what is the role of the human being, the function of the human being in that all-inclusive natural plan. So in that context, we need to understand that when we talk about light in the wisdom of Kabbalah, when we talk about the upper light or just light, or even the different instances and aspects of the light, ultimately we are talking about the program, the natural program that governs all of nature. All right? So that's why, as we just saw in this quote from Michael Leitman, when we talk about light and about attracting or awakening the light, it's not even just something that applies to humans. Every element in nature, every part in creation is in touch with a specific, unique kind of illumination or light, aspect of light, that is responsible for its evolution. So when we say light, we mean the program that governs all of nature. Let's try to understand what is this program according to Kabbalists. So if there's one thing that's very clear to us about Mother Nature, it's that she continuously creates life. and more advanced levels of life each time, whether it be new elementary particles that are created in the belly of stars, just like those billions of years ago that created the carbon and the iron that is now in our blood, or any other element that makes up biological life today, or whether it's new plants that emerge from the biosphere, or new species that break out of their eggs, or in some other ways. Again and again, what nature does again and again and again is bringing together different elements, maybe even opposite elements, enveloping them together until they form something new, and thus giving birth to the next level of life. And this is the reoccurring process, the repeating pattern that we see in nature. This program of nature, Kabbalists say, brings opposites together and creates life. That program, that unique thing that only nature knows how to do, is what Kabbalists might also refer to as light. So that program works through the interplay between two opposite forces. These two opposite forces, according to Kabbalah, they run through all of reality. So let's go now to a short clip with a quote from Baal HaSulam, explaining to us how these two forces work, what are these two opposite forces, and how they bring about everything that we see in nature in front of us. Let's take a look. There is none that does not obey the iron law of gradual evolution resulting from the collision of these two forces with one another. 1, a positive force, meaning constructive, and 2, a negative force, meaning negative and destructive. They create and complement the entire reality, in general and particular, through their harsh and perpetual war with one another until they reach their ultimate perfection. So two opposite forces running through all of reality from the micro to the macro. They may appear as plus and minus, protons and electrons, attraction and rejection, male and female, contraction and expansion, inhale and exhale. They can take the shape of physical forces, chemical reactions, biological processes, or even psychological discernments. Two opposite forces that gradually build every level of nature: still, vegetative, animate, human. And Baal HaSulam continues with this. Let's take planet Earth as an example. First, it was but a ball of fog-like gas. Through the gravity inside it, over time, it concentrated the atoms in it into a closer circle. As a result, the ball of gas became a liquid ball of fire. Over eons of terrible wars between the two forces within Earth, the positive and the negative, the chilling force in it was finally triumphant over the force of liquid fire. It cooled a thin crust around the Earth and hardened there. However, the planet had not yet grown still from the war between the forces, and after some time the liquid fire erupted in great tumult from the bowels of the Earth, rising and shattering the cold, hard crust to pieces. Thus the eons interchanged, and each time the cooling force prevailed, the crust it made grew thicker. Finally, the positive forces overpowered the negative ones and came into complete harmony. The liquids took their place in the bowels of the Earth, and the cold crust became thick enough around them to enable the creation of organic life on top of it, as it is today. All right, all right. So this is quite the all-inclusive program of all of nature condensed into one quote or two quotes, and presented in 2.5 minutes. So, of course, Kabbalists go very deep into it, and the thousands of pages that describe the spiritual structure of reality are just an elaboration, a detailed account of how these two forces work on the spiritual level. But what we see is that they manifest in the levels of nature that we discover in front of our eyes, the still, vegetative, animate, and human levels of nature. And so 4.5 billion years ago, on Earth, after it is formed, life starts moving to the new level of evolution, to the next level of development. And that means that the two forces, the two opposite forces, now take on a new kind of shape. They appear as the forces of integration and individuation. So on the one hand, let me go back for a second. On the one hand, these forces bring elements to integrate, to collaborate, to coalesce. And on the other hand, they allow these elements to become unique, to become individuated. And so, for example, the early crust of the Earth was one mass of minerals at first. So that's about 4.5 billion years ago. And then for about 1 billion years, what happened with it is that it individuated into different types of bacteria. So essentially, all of the minerals and all of the life that existed here was packaged into different unique packagings, units of life. And then these units of life, these bacterial cells, they began to evolve under the two opposite forces of individuation and integration. And that means that at first they went through states of conflict where they would consume each other's resources and occupy each other and colonize each other. And then on the other hand, they also learned how to collaborate and how to share resources and how to put together some collective structures. And ultimately, what happens is that within about 1 billion years, these bacterial cells learn how to connect in a completely new way. And they give birth to a completely new creation, and this is called the nucleated cell. And the nucleated cell is really the only cell that ever evolved on this planet after the bacterial cells. It makes up all of the life that we are familiar with. And that nucleated cell, under the pressure of the two opposite forces, individuation and integration, we can call them, that nucleated cell too individuates into many kinds of nucleated cells. And for about 1.5 billion years, they too go through some juvenile state of competition and conflict and colonization of each other and so on. And on the other hand, they also learn how to collaborate, how to communicate, how to share resources. And so about 600 million years ago, they create the multicellular organism, which is essentially nucleated cells, different nucleated cells coming together to create a new collective organism. The next level of life emerges, and the nucleated cell is really the thing, the unit that makes up all the plants and all the animals that we are familiar with, including those that began to evolve about 200,000 years ago, called humans. So, humanity too doesn't go away, doesn't go outside of this program of development. The two opposite forces continue to work through human evolution as well. And again, we can call them integration or interdependence or connection. And on the other hand, separation or individuation or egoism. And so we too, as human beings, just like the rest of nature, we are being pushed to evolve by the same program, the same opposite to two opposite forces. But there's one difference, one fundamental difference between our development and the rest of nature. Let's go to Bala Sulam's explanation of this. He says this: all organisms develop by the same order. From the moment they are planted to the end of their ripening, they undergo hundreds of periods of situations due to the two opposite forces, the two forces. For us humans, however, the material force is insufficient to bring us to completion. And that's due to the contemplative power in us. Thus, for humans, there is a new order of gradual development, unlike any other animal, and that is the gradual development of human thought. So, what is Bala Sulam telling us here? In the still, the vegetative, and the animate worlds of nature, the program or the light, same thing, works through instincts. It just works. In simple words, nature just does that. It just pushes the still to evolve, individuate, integrate, collaborate, rise to a new level, create cells, create multi-cellular organism, and so on. Nature does the whole thing. On the human level, as Kabbalist Bala Sulam tells us here, on the human level there is a unique difference, and the difference is that the two opposite forces have to run through our conscious participation. He calls it here the contemplative power in us, or a new order of the gradual development of human thought, meaning we, unlike the rest of nature that evolved before us, we are participating in our own evolution in a conscious manner. And that conscious participation in our evolution is exactly what Kabbalists mean when they say we can attract the light that reforms, or awaken upon us the light that develops us. I hope this is beginning to kind of settle and you're starting to get some clarity with these terms and what they actually mean. And if you have questions, now is a great time to throw them into the chat. Very soon I'll pause for questions, and Rachel here behind the scenes, or Ruth, or both of them, will help me get to all your questions. So definitely throw them into the chat. So yes, this is what Kabbalists mean by attracting the surrounding light or the reforming light. Meaning we have an ability, a unique ability that stems from our unique conscious structure, that we can welcome the next states of our development. We can, in other words, use our consciousness to as if attract, to draw into us the information that already exists in the program about our next level of life, our next level of connection, our next level of development, our next level of integration. That is essentially what is meant by attracting the reforming light. Getting that program of nature, which we cannot change, to work on us more faster, more effectively, and that's due to our conscious participation. That's how nature designed us, unlike the still, vegetative, and animate levels. Here's another important quote, and then after that, I'm going straight into questions. So go ahead and throw them into the chat if you haven't already. So here's another quote from Baal Sulam, another angle on the same concept. The law of development. Let me just make sure you can see it. Wait, that's the previous quote. All right. The law of development, which encompasses the whole of reality. Again, law of development, program of development. We essentially are referring. We could refer to it in a Kabbalistic language as that light that reforms. So that law of development, which encompasses the whole of reality, is certain to reform all that is harmful to good and useful. That's another important concept. This means that this law of development has a purpose and a goal to which it is developing all organisms. Just like if you look at a fruit, for example, from our perspective, if we taste a fruit while it's still ripening, while it's still under the law of development and hasn't reached its completion yet, it may taste bitter, and more than that, it can even harm us. It can even kill us. There's I can't remember the name of it, but there's a specific grape, I believe, or berry, maybe, that if you eat it before it's ripe, then it can develop in your body into something similar to cyanide and can literally kill you. But if you wait for its completion, if you wait for the berry to ripen, if you wait for the fruit to be ready, then it reaches its final form. So, man, however, was given the mind, governance, and permission to, listen carefully, to accept the above-mentioned law of development under his own authority and government. So, to accept the above-mentioned law of development, meaning we can't change the program of nature. It's not something we can change or choose to choose a different program that will govern us, that will govern our development. But we can accept it under our own authority and government. And he is able to hasten, to speed up, to accelerate the process of development as he wishes, freely and completely independent of the boundaries of time. So, take a moment to let that sink in. The reforming light means the program of development, the law of development. Same thing. The fact is that we can't change it. We can't change the program of development. It's deterministic. There are laws, there's information, and it exists in potential, and it develops, which means it unfolds from potential to actual. We can't change it. But we can change our conscious acceptance of it. Meaning there is a very unique area that you can call free choice. We're not going to get into this in all the detail right now. That's a topic for a whole other session, freedom of choice. Big topic, a lot of material in the wisdom of Kabbalah about that. Not getting into that right now, but let's just say that free choice is not what we think it is. Because egoistically, naturally, we think about it the way we would like it to be, but there's a very specific area of latitude for human beings with regards to the program that governs our development, and that is called free choice. But it gives us a little bit of a perspective on it. We are invited, and that's what's important from this quote, we are invited to download the program of development onto ourselves of our own accord, volitionally, with our own conscious desire, instead of waiting for the next update to come. Just this should be a good analogy for all of you 21st century people, right? We all have these phones, and you know how it's like when you have an app or the operating system of the phone, and there's an update, and you get updates to your apps once in a while, and then you update, and then you get a new feature, right? So imagine it like this: all the information about our development, our next stages of development, our updates, is already there. It's already embedded in nature. It's included in the program. And if we use this method of attracting the surrounding light, which is what Kabbalah is all about, we're able to begin to download more and more updates of that program instead of waiting for them to come by way of just the natural pace of things, which usually means suffering and being pushed from behind by the forces of nature until we actually agree with the next state. This is what the wisdom of Kabbalah is all about. Kabbalah explains how to do this. This is what the wisdom of Kabbalah is for. And this is why Baal HaSulam tells us, as the quote that we started from, this is why there is such a great thing. Let me put that quote again. This is why there is such a great thing about the wisdom of Kabbalah, the study of Kabbalah, which should be publicized, and it's a wonderful, invaluable remedy to those who engage in the wisdom of Kabbalah, to speed up our evolution of our own accord. And that's what we mean by drawing or awakening the reforming light, nature's program. All right, I'm going to go to some questions right now. Hopefully there's already some questions in the chat. I see there are. Let's start right away. I'm looking at a question now from Julie Dehan. Hey, Julie. And she asks the following. Aren't we in the law of development anyway? Is it more about the recognition of it? Okay, great. You probably wrote down that question just like a minute or two ago, because that's exactly what we were talking about right now. I'll summarize. It's exactly what we just said. Yes, we're talking about there's no randomness in nature. According to Kabbalah, there's no such thing as random things that suddenly happen. There's no random mutations, if you will, in evolution. There is a deterministic program. This is something that very much corresponds with what physicists say about the fundamental laws of the universe. Ultimately, they are deterministic, and if you look at it from that perspective, there's no place for freedom of choice also, because everything is predetermined, right? Yet, while everything is deterministic, and Kabbalists refer to nature's plan as deterministic, there's also another aspect which we humans know very little about, called consciousness. And consciousness is exactly like you said, Julie. Yes, it's about our perception and sensation of that unfolding program. So it's going to unfold, whatever we do, whatever the case may be. It's always working. It's like Baal HaSulam calls it in another article, the press of development. It's like a train that keeps moving, but how we experience it is completely up to us. Yes. I see something from Francine. Hey, Francine. Must we study Kabbalah to download, or can we just agree to do it? Okay. What does it mean to agree to do it? Tell you what, we still have time. I wasn't planning on getting deep into the actual technology that Kabbalah suggests, that Kabbalah offers and teaches about how to attract the reforming light. And it requires some more in-depth study, which you can definitely get in our online education center, KabU. There's probably a link in the description, and maybe Rachel and Ruth can throw a link into the chat as well while I'm mentioning this now. So there, that's what KabU is for, teaching you how to attract the light that reforms. That's what Kabbalah is all about, and that's what we are teaching. But let's see, Francine, let's go through some more questions, and I think we might still have time to give at least some basic explanation of what the technology is, and meaning how do you actually awaken the surrounding light. So to answer you for now, just agree to it. Yes, but agreeing to it means a lot. It means an inner development. It means a conscious internal development in order to identify how exactly that light works on you. You learn how to find the two opposite forces in you, and how to consciously attract those more advanced states of connection between the two opposite forces. If we have more time, I'll draw something and try to make it clearer. Let's go to more questions. Walter Z asked, how do you draw the light? I just discussed that. I see more people want to talk about that naturally, so I'll try to leave some time for that. Gilai, I hope I'm pronouncing, I don't think I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Gelaye. So, sorry I can't pronounce it correctly, not sure how to. How do we know in which stage we are, or how close we are to the reforming light? That's all part of how to draw the light. There are indications. In short, you find out those, you start getting a sense, a clear sense of what these two opposite forces are in your development. You begin to recognize how there is a desire within you that's growing towards more connection, and on the other hand, there's also an egoistic growth within you that happens, where you discover that you're opposite from that connection. And these two opposite forces, just like they worked in the bacterial cells or in the multicellular organisms and in the forces of nature, they work within us as well. You learn how to identify them and monitor their growth. And that gives you a sense of how you're able to draw the reforming light. All right. I'll tell you what, guys, I see more questions, but I see that everyone wants to go deeper into the technicality of it. So what do you say if I will take a few minutes and go there? Because I see that a lot of the questions about that. Maybe there are questions about other things that I'll be missing, but I'm convinced that this is something you want to know more about. So let me talk about it. Okay, here's my drawing board. So let's try to make this a little clearer. All right. So first of all, when we're talking about drawing the reforming light, wait a second. Let me use a different thing here. Okay. There is, let's put, this line will be a separation between where we are and where we want to be. So above the line is the spiritual state, the more advanced state of reality, okay? And below the line is where we are. What the Kabbalists did is their books are essentially, let's put a book here. Their texts, they essentially serve us as an elevator. When we read the Kabbalistic texts, so here's an eye, right? So our eye is looking into the Kabbalistic texts. What happens is that we are actually reading about our more advanced states, because Kabbalists who attained those states, they tell us about them. Very simple. But the thing is, in those states, in those higher states of consciousness, those higher states of spiritual development, we humans exist in a different form, in a non-material collective form. So all the individual beings, all the individual humans are actually in that state. They are connected together as a single consciousness, a collective global entity that Kabbalists refer to as the collective soul or the collective desire or Adam Arishon. That's in Hebrew. I don't want to confuse you. But that is the state that we are aspiring to when we're talking about spiritual development. This is the states that we are rising towards. And these are the states that are described in the Kabbalistic texts. But here's the thing. Remember the initial quote we started today's session with? When we just read about these states, we don't understand them. We don't, meaning they can't go directly into our brain, okay? They can't go there directly because at the moment we're not there, so we don't have the capacity to understand it. It's like you're trying to tell a bacterial cell what it's like to be a nucleated cell, or what it's like for a plant to be an animal, or what it's like for a baby, to make it even closer to us, for a baby to be a 5-year-old, or for a 5-year-old to be a 20-year-old. It's a completely different perception of reality and understanding of the world and sensation of the laws of nature. It's a completely different existence. And that's just on the same level. Here we are talking about crossing from a material existence to a non-material perception of the world. All right? So remember what Bar Salam told us in the beginning. Although we don't understand the states, the higher states of development that we are talking about, if we learn how to read about those states with a different kind of tool, with a different device, and that device is our desire. In Kabbalah, we call this it's a very specific desire. We call this the point in the heart. It's a metaphor for one unique desire that exists in your heart. If your heart represents all of your desires, the point in the heart represents a specific desire within you that wants spiritual development. So when we grow that desire, when we learn how to grow that desire, and we approach the book, and we learn how to grow that desire, and we approach the book from that desire, so our brain here essentially is really, it's almost as if it doesn't exist. Yes, it serves us in reading the book, but it's not like we are trying to interpret those texts in our brain and that's it. We're trying to get an attainment, to build our vessel to actually perceive what's in the book. And when we do that, when we grow our desire and learn about the higher states of development, what happens as a result is that these higher states of evolution, these higher states of development influence us and develop us to a greater extent. And this is what we call awakening the surrounding light. This is basically what it means. Now, there's more. This is a very kind of general picture of it, just to give you sort of the mechanism. Inside this area here, the point in the heart, that's where all the work happens. That's where we learn how, by directing our points in the hearts towards connection with other points in the hearts, that's why we study in groups. That's why the actual practical implementation of Kabbalah has always been in groups from the times of Abraham until today, thousands of years, because then we can direct our desire in the correct way, and we can begin to feel the two opposite forces growing within us and building our next level of development. All right, there's more to say. I will stop here though, because this might be also a little bit too much detail for people without prior background knowledge. So I'll leave that for later. We still have a few minutes. I do want to go to some questions. Again, I'll just mention, if you're interested in that, if you want to go deeper into the actual method, that's why we have KabU. KabU is all about that. KabU is an education center, an online education center that we've built with a bunch of fun, loving instructors who will help you get into the actual method, and you'll also be introduced to a wonderful environment of like-minded spiritual seekers who are interested in implementing this method together. And it's a wonderful experience. I'm sure that if we have some KabU students here, they can share some of their experience. In any case, there's a link in the description if you're interested. There's maybe one in the chat too. So take a look at that. Let's go to some questions. All right. I see another one from Julie, but I'm gonna try to go to some some people that didn't ask, that I didn't read their question before. Tino, you're asking, are the two forces still fighting inside of us, inside our minds too? Will that fight make us evolve into something new? Yes, thank you. That's Tino. That's a much better summary than I would give. Concise and accurate. That's exactly what's happening, and this is also why this is the root cause of all of the crises that we see in our world today. It's at the core of why we see political conflicts and social conflicts, economic disparity, climate destabilization. All of that stuff is because those two opposite forces are at war, basically. It looks to us like war. They're in a dance. They're building a tension between them, and because that tension is what's required for the next level of consciousness to emerge. That is playing itself today in the 21st century, in our world, every day. This is something that the more you study these texts from the Kabbalists, the more you see how relevant they are. You can really begin to see how this world becomes transparent. It's the program of development, nature's all-inclusive program that guides everything that's happening in front of our eyes today. All right. Christopher. Is this a question or more like a comment? A new Kabbalist needs to learn though you cannot really ascend by eating other animals. It simply cannot be done. All the greatest sages were vegetarian. Okay, that's not really a question. That was picked up in the document I'm looking at. That's a whole other discussion. We could talk about it if you want. We can do a special Kabbalah Explained Simply session about our attitude to nature, our attitude to the other levels of development, the still, the vegetative, and the animate. Are we treating them in the right way today? How should we be treating them? How did people treat them in the past? That's a deeper topic of discussion that I won't get into now, but if there's enough interest, then we can do a session specifically about that. Let me see if there's any more kind of related questions. Maria is asking, why our consciousness is hidden? Which is the sense of it? And how could we open it? Wow, great question. We don't have a lot of time, but I'll try to give a concise answer. Our consciousness is hidden from us. It's true. Because of a specific, deliberate process referred to in Kabbalah as concealment. In fact, there is a system of concealments, 125 concealments over the complete consciousness of the whole of reality. Those 125 filters are what essentially they're broken down to 5 worlds. World in Hebrew comes from the word ha'alama, which means concealment. It's not a place, it's a level of perception. So there are altogether 5 big levels of perception, levels of consciousness, and in each of them there's 5 smaller degrees of consciousness called partsufim, and in each partsuf there's another 5 called sfirot. So that's a lot of detail, but the point is that there is a system of filters over the complete consciousness of reality. The reason for it is in order for us to develop of our own accord. The reason for the concealment of the whole spiritual reality, the reason that we don't feel where we truly are, is in order for us to be able to consciously feel it. That's the whole difference between the still vegetative animate creatures and the human. The still vegetative and animate, they follow nature's program. They have no problem, but they don't have a conscious, they have some sentience, they sense, but they don't have a conscious, active participation in the program. They're governed by the program through instincts. In our case, the program is concealed from us. We don't feel like we're part of it, but specifically thanks to that concealment, we can develop consciousness of our own accord. So it was deliberately designed for the human to grow to a new level. So that will be it for this question. How can we develop it? That has to do with everything that I've described. That unique desire needs to grow through 2 opposite forces. That's what the technology of Kabbalah is all about. That's what the science of Kabbalah really is. Let's see if we can do one more question here. We really have to conclude already. I will say that for the Kabbalah students, we are continuing to an exclusive Zoom session for the Kabbalah students. So there is a Q&A session. I will be in the Zoom there. Maybe Gil, our fellow Kabbalah instructor, will join us as well. So no worries, Kabbalah students. We'll meet in just a few moments in the Zoom session. Again, I'll also remind, if you want to be part of the Zoom session right now, just join Kabbalah. You can just go and click the link in the description or in the chat. You can just go and check it out right now and join our session. I think even if you're not already a member, you can go. There's also like a free trial, so you can go ahead and give it a shot if you want. Let's go to one final question before we conclude. Let's see. I need to choose one, and there's a couple here. All right. Konstantinos Niko is asking, so can we welcome the next level of positive relationships above the negative ones? I like that question a lot because it shows that you're touching on the core of what the future states of development for mankind really are. that is the whole thing. When we think of spiritual development, we might think of, me and my individual, inner, personal development that no one can see, and it's all within my inner world. And it's true, that is correct. But what you discover in that inner world is your connection to the rest of reality. What you develop a sense of is how you're connected to the collective desire of all of mankind, and in fact, all of nature. You begin to develop such a perception, a perspective that everything that you see outside of you is parts of you. The still, the vegetative, the animate, all those even galaxies and stars billions of light years away from us, and the little insects that exist in rainforests, and animals that you see on the street, or people that you see, or news anchors on your TV. All of that becomes that picture remains, but what you're really discovering is an extension of that picture, and how you are connected to each and every item in reality. The relationship that we have in our higher states of development with the rest of reality is a relationship that is similar to nature's program. It's a relationship of unbounded connection, complete and total interconnection with all of mankind and with all of reality. And that is really what the spiritual correction or the spiritual development is all about. No one needs to try to fix some attributes of themselves. That is psychology, according to the wisdom of Kabbalah. Spirituality is our connection to the whole. So that's a very important angle through which you want to look at spiritual development, through the prism of the authentic wisdom of Kabbalah. All right, with this, we're going to have to conclude. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. Sorry if I didn't get to all of the questions. Thank you. And that's it for today. I'll see you in the next one. And for the Kabbalah students, I'll be in our exclusive Zoom session in just a moment. So thank you, everybody, and all the best.